And I think that we've been so many in this country have been so formed by that independent, me, myself, and I, no one else can get up, only I can succeed kind of mindset, that we have lost sight of these values that we give lip service to.
Yeah. Welcome back to another episode of Keeping It a Bean. Keeping It a Bean is where we bring together culture, conversation, and coffee. But in tonight's case, because we're recording at night, we're drinking some tea. There is no honey in this tea, so it's a little different. I'm not going to lie. And maybe I'm weak. I'm not going to hold because I can drink black coffee. But plain tea, it don't always hit the same way. I'm not going to hold. So other than that, if you are new here, my name is Marquise. Marquise Davon. Keith, never Mark. I just wanted that pause there so people just understood that I was very serious about that moment.
Never Mark.
Never Mark.
Marquise.
Just don't know. Yep, Marquise. Keys, cool. Mark sounds a little crazy. I'm not going to lie. But if you're returning here, hello to niggas and niggas only. You already know what the vibes are. You got to let the people know. It's an affirmation for the people.
For sure.
As you are returning, make sure that you're able to support me in a couple of different ways now, which is really fun. So I have my own coffee blend named Leroy's Blend. So if you're feeling a little bit more of a luxury coffee, you'll be able to buy some in the description box below. But I'm also selling my Good Morning to Niggas and Niggas Only mugs as well. So feel free to hit that. That's going to be on my Etsy. So please make sure that you are buying those. Other than that, this month I will be doing a live podcast series called Spill the Beans. This month we are going to focus on the importance of third spaces. So we're going to have an awesome panel, but it's also going to be paired with a workshop and a coffee tasting hosted by BVP Coffee as well. So you'll be able to taste some of their coffee, but you'll also be able to taste Leroy's Blend too. So make sure that you stop by. There's going to be a couple of vendors there. We're going to have some lessons. We're going to do workshops, but also communities are going to gather on a Sunday, February 23rd from 11 to 2. So I know I'm competing with church and I'm competing with brunch, but come hang out at a coffee tasting with me. It's a good time. Other than that, we're going to get started with the show. I am so excited for this guest that we are having on today, especially just what he is doing as a council member, who he is, but also being able to follow his journey a lot more. It's been really dope to get to know you through your politics over these last couple of years, but also just seeing you speak in different iterations as well, which has been dope between the barbershop talks, but also being out and supporting the community in different ways. So I'm excited to get into this conversation with Councilmember Nicolas O'Rourke. How you doing, my guy?
I'm doing all right. Actually, I'm doing really, really well. Grateful to be on here with you, Marquise. And also, hat tip to you for the work that you're doing, the content that you're putting out in the spheres. Is a whole lot of do-nothing, brain rot podcasts that exist out there, but this ain't one of them. So
okay, let's go. You say because it's what? Brain rot will not be the word of 2025, okay? Not when you're in this here podcast, okay? No, I appreciate you. And so we're going to get started into this conversation. A lot of it's going to be around your journey into politics, but then also how do you function as a person in politics as well? So we're going to kind of get to know you, but also get to know the work that you do a little bit more intimately, just because I think a lot of people oftentimes are like, it's politics, but because of your job is like in service to the people, we oftentimes don't see you as the human because you have a little bit of impact over what happens in our daily lives too, right? And so I'm interested to see how you got into the space, but also beyond that. However, before we get started, we do this nice little icebreaker called Keeping It a Bean. So Keeping It a Bean is keeping it 100, your most authentic hot take, whatever that is, personal, pop culture, politics, whatever that is in this moment that you're just like, I feel the need to get this off my chest. What are you keeping it a bean about today?
I don't have to keep too much, in the pocket. I'm an independent, so I can kind of say what I want to. But I do think it always bears repeating that as much as I appreciate black excellence and excellent black people, it ain't going to save no black body.
Well, shit. We starting off hot.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, we need a whole lot more than how well you do in your individual life if we are serious about realizing the sorts of radical changes that have to happen in our society. Then there's got to be something more than just what me and my little family got going on.
Yeah. Oh, that is a whole word and a half. Because I did not know we were going to start there.
You got to say it more often. More often. People really think that your personal success is going to save somebody.
And they just be like the talented 10th. They said actually it's the guiding 100. He actually changed his own situation with Du Bois and his stuff too. No, I appreciate that hot take starting off on the show too, especially to hear like a council person also say this, right? Somebody in politics also expressing this politic because sometimes we get like the big platitudes and just like, we got to do better. But this idea of like, there's a much more communal approach in terms of just like Black excellence can indicate individual success, but how does that success also benefit a community of folks, and how we are actually moving collectively towards one thing or a couple of things, rather than being like, well, I got here this way, so the rest of y'all can do it this way too. Sometimes it doesn't always a lot of time it doesn't function that way. And so I'm excited to kind of lean into that a little bit later into the show too.
Sure.
Cool. Other than that, what am I going to have a hot take about today? I'm not even going to look at Daniel. I'm going to mind my business, you know? Anyways, the hot take is Beyonce got Album of the Year for Cowboy Carter. And what a time to be a Black American. It's a great time because history was told through that album. And so everybody else that is saying that she's got that Billie Eilish deserved that award over her, I'm going to kick y'all. And I hope you all step on Legos. That is my simple hot take of the day.
In the morning.
Yes, they have to. Thank you. You understand. Because I had to let people know. When I saw most of my students today talk around like, oh, Billie Eilish deserved it, I said, I don't know what's cooked in Gen Z.
Wow.
But y'all a little cooked in the brain. I'm not going to hold.
Wow.
I don't care. It's okay. And I love that y'all have that perspective. I'm glad. Anyways, it was just nonsensical for today. So thank you for just hopping into that Keeping It a Bean segment with me. And now we're going to get fully into the conversation, or as I like to say, we're going to steep into the conversation.
Steep.
Cause you see, thank you. I'm glad you appreciate that because not everybody the English teacher and me swear I'm the funniest person in the world. They don't be believing me.
People don't have an appreciation for words.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. People need to read more. That's my real hot take. If you didn't know, if you are using AI, you are actually lowering your ability to retain and retain information. I was about to be real redundant in that statement. Do you know what that word is? That's a SAT word right there for y'all too.
Well, Marquise, you can't be on the phone. You know, the Ivy League, they said the Ivy League kids can't read four books.
They can't read 4 books.
They said they can't read books.
It's actually tragic. And I said, oh, the institution's respect is going down and down and down and down. That's another conversation for another day because, you know, shout out to media literacy. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation with you because I get to learn a little bit more about your journey into politics, where that started, and really see how we can go from there. So for me, take it back. Like, let's start actually with, like, when did you become interested in politics?
College.
Why?
I have always been interested in history, and my first trek was to be an educator. I went to an HBCU, and I was my major was AYA education with emphasis on social sciences. So I was going to teach high school history, poli-sci, social studies, whatever. And that was always an interest for me. I come from a family of educators on my father's side. My grandmother was a professor of music. My father taught a little bit. My uncle was a professor. My my aunt also an English teacher. And so education is there. Yeah. And so I did want to do that because I wanted to have impact. I wasn't really money hungry. But I was never good at numbers. Yeah. Math was always a little sore spot for you, boy.
I ain't worried about that either.
You know. But I was always interested in the stories. I was always interested in history. That always gathered me, and I became interested in the ways in which people have been able to shape history to improve people's lives. Yeah. So I obviously clung to those stories that come out of our history as Black folks and all of that. I'm also I wouldn't have called myself a church boy. I don't even necessarily like the term, but
you like a PK or like a church kid? A kid who happened to go to church.
Yeah, okay. That one. I'm more of like a kid who happened to church, and over time, I kind of became a church kid. Okay. But yeah, it wasn't foreign in the family, but we weren't church like that. Baptist folk, and we went to church, but it wasn't morning, noon, and night every single day, that kind of thing. Yeah. But when I got to college, I got around actual church kids and all of that, and so my interest in the Black prophetic tradition, as well as the stories that we learn in history and those sorts of things, it kind of dovetailed well.
Yeah. I was going to say that actually like leans in because even when you give speeches, there is a particular like cadence that you carry. Sure. Because you know how to command an audience, but it is like that call and response kind of aspect. There is like almost like a pastor kind of approach that you have to it, sure. Which I think is also like interesting too because some of the critique that has been coming up lately in terms of like politics, and I'm wondering like how religion or at least the church or church folks could have shaped this for you, is like the church being a gathering spot for Black folks to like engage in dialogue, but also engage in community, and how that kind of served as a space where here's where we can align in terms of like spirituality, but also in terms of politics sometimes, or when we just need to get through and overcome. There's a space that can mobilize that kind of space. So has that also impacted how you even approach politics potentially?
Yes. So before I became a formal pastor, I mean, ministry has been there since college as well, but I learned that the activism that I understood ministers to be doing and other folks, people of goodwill, as King would say, being involved in, I recognized that it wasn't just activism, that it was organizing, and that there was a difference between the two.
Correct.
So I did learn the science of organizing, not just, people throw the word around a lot, but there is actual strategy, logic, teachings, principles that inform it, all of that sort of thing. And I did learn how to organize amongst other people of faith, interfaith community for sure, but I did learn it there. And I have always felt that while they're not the same vocation, there's a lot of overlap between organizers and pastors.
Oh, that's interesting.
We're building community. You're not just advocating on particular points. You're actually, there's a logic that suggests that the building blocks of power are relationships.
Yes.
So the more relationships we wield and have, the more power we have. And so certainly, an institution, it's a bit archaic now, but these ideas of like churches and things like that, the idea that people gather on a regular basis to be community and to support each other, to stimulate the ineffable interior life and all those sorts of things. It's where the undercurrent of values is kind of flowing.
Yeah.
And to be able to gather around that, to be able to pull from that river, so to speak, and to be able to live a life that's informed by that, I think is important. It's not that different from what we're trying to realize in society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that, because now, all right, I'm going to take this question a little different now because even as you talk around these principles, right, I think that piece is important because I see that actually lived out through how you are organizing and how you are gathering folks together, especially as I was thinking around like going into this election season, as I'm thinking around even you having to shift people's ideas, right? Or at least being able to shift a culture so they can follow along with like what your policy is ultimately going to do to help them.
Yeah.
And so I'm intrigued by this because oftentimes we see a lot of church folk and we're immediately like, I don't know, y'all a little conservative. I don't know about that. Like, are you really going to be here for the people type situation? However, what I'm also hearing is like for you, that activist and organizer spirit in you has always been prevalent, but I see it in terms of like how you operate today, especially because you represent the Working Families Party. And in that, you are having to rally a bunch of different people who may experience like this very similar thing. We may be experiencing pain. We may be experiencing like economic anxiety, but it's not necessarily a popular politic that is lived out. And so how do you think like you are able to motivate a group of people to like lean more into what the Working Families Party is trying to do? So first, can you define what the Working Families Party is, and then lean into like the work you do to get more people to buy into what your politic is? So
the Working Families Party, thank you for bringing this up. I take a lot of pride in being an independent with the Working Families Party.
Yeah.
It is not a common thing in a city this size, by the way,
right,
to have, and it's not just a city this size, but a city with the political history that this one has, to have other viable, non-delusional options to choose within the governing system.
Yeah.
The Working Families Party is about a 30-year-old political party that has that was born out of New York, the Northeast, that now has a reach across the U.S. It is we fashion ourselves as a grassroots political party that's working to build multiracial working class political power for the multiracial working class and working poor, to build real, non-delusional, durable political power for the multiracial working class and working poor, recognizing, as I said before, Black excellence is going to save us, and Black people alone in this country are not enough to win. We have to build. We have to have a wider vision, and so the party is trying to put together a vehicle that allows for that to happen. And some of the ways by which we do that is recognizing opportunities where there are ideologically aligned groups, communities, pockets of people, and we can organize around shared values, like making sure that folks have a living wage, like folks, like making sure that folks have quality education. For example, one of the things that we care about in our office is, recognizing in a city like Philadelphia, it's the poorest big city in the country. If you want folks to not be poor, you don't tell them to go get a job. You can give them money.
Yeah, because poverty is a political decision. It's not an individual one.
1,000%. Yeah. And we also found out in the last couple of years that the government can give you money when they want to.
Okay, because
clock it. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is not make the party is trying to make these things that seem practical, that have been kind of cast as populist and therefore impractical. We're trying to make them, deliverable things. And so I believe it's important. What am I doing now to try to do that? Well, one, it's actually risking running for office, which is not an easy thing. As an independent, you get attacked by all the parties. We were very explicit about the fact that we were running against Republicans for these 2 seats. When I say we, myself as well as Kendra Brooks, she's my the minority leader in council. We said to folks, we advertised as much, we campaigned saying that we're trying to get Republicans out, get working families in, and not only were we attacked by Republicans, we were attacked by Democrats too. It's a dog eat dog world out there. But if there are those persons who are willing to get out there and do it, it allows for there to be a symbol, at least an example of what is possible. But we are constantly having conversation with the various fragmented groups of folks that are still caring about advancing material changes in people's lives in the city. We're trying to work them together, pull them together to be a part of our party, a part of our movement, so that we can deliver for working people.
And I love that and everything that you said, because I've been questioning recently, because I just finished rereading the Young Lords, one of their pieces around how they organize and stuff like that, but the inspiration that they got from the Black Panthers Party, and even being able to understand and articulate a class struggle, because it felt like the stakes were raised a lot more during that time, whereas it feels a little bit more difficult to articulate those stakes now. I think also where we're at right now, people are going to have no choice within the next year or two to really understand what it meant to not have civil rights, right? And so that makes a third option or a separate option necessary in this moment of time, because people will be forced to realize even what we voted for actually is not what we need or what we expected to get. If we weren't getting from Democrats, but we also are definitely not getting from Republicans, people are going to be in a space of oh no, we need to rely on the people again. And so there is a painful optimism in me where I'm just people need to experience a very specific condition, an extreme condition, in order to be pushed to something like a working families party, right?
Yeah.
And it is one of those pieces that I think is so tragic that we need to burn our hand in order to learn the lesson. But I'm wondering if you may also see an opportunity that you're this is actually the most important space that we need to be in right now, because we need to mobilize for people to understand actually there is a third option for you, and this option has been here because we're also advocating for the people. Because I don't know if that articulating a racial struggle is going to be able to happen right now, because each racial category, we all feel slighted in a different way by each other's community, right? And so what does it mean to be able to get people to understand, no, this is actually a class issue?
1,000%.
Right.
One of the things that has been an enigma to me since really running both times, as well as now serving a year into my first term, is how many folks I've had to explain that the two-party system doesn't really work, or there's an understanding that I think that people are frustrated with it, but I didn't grow up in a home where we ever thought that either party was the perfect crystallization or the perfect packaging or vehicle for the things that we cared about.
Yeah.
And those things could change, but at no point was either one of those parties the perfect distillation of what it is that we wanted to see be represented within our politics. And but I do think that, I don't know if it's been the pandemic or among other things, just the failure of government time after time, what have you.
Broke.
But there has been a desire for something else, obviously, where you have folks who really don't align with the Republican Party who are willing to entertain it because they're so frustrated with Democrats, or vice versa.
Right.
I do think that there is now and I've had this conversation with folks on my team, my comms director as well. We talked quite a bit about now being a unique time where I think people can hear again why we need to have more options. Right. I'm not even saying do away with the Democratic Party. If that's your cup of tea, so be it, right? I also recognize that currently, as it stands right now, if you want to be able to win on a large scale, you're going to have to bang with one of those parties. My race is a bit unique. But it is important for the sake of actual democracy, not just saying the word democracy and what we mean is y'all go vote when we tell you to, but actual civic engagement, the things that happen beforehand, throughout, and even after election season. If we're going to realize a functioning democracy or save it, as they say, then we need to have more genuine, authentic expressions of political values, ideas, or what have you, active in governing spaces. Right. And it doesn't need to all be focused on the top at the federal level. In fact, it's going to be a long time before we can actually see more. Bernie Sanders is independent. I think Angus King is independent. Those are the few. But if you're going to get more of those, it's going to be a while for you to get there. At the local level, where people's lives are most impacted, there needs to be more options there. There needs to be more examples of this so that we don't see a continual decrease in civic engagement. Because even with, let's say, this past election when we saw Trump reelected again, people talk about it being like a sweep or a landslide, but I think what we saw in the numbers is less engagement with the Democratic Party candidate, not like a surge in voting for the Republican.
Those numbers didn't necessarily change. It's just that the white men who came out for Biden are the white men who will not come out for Kamala, and so it's been interesting watching other people blame like the pro-Palestinian non-voters or the third-party voters or the. I'm like, no, it's not. You can't blame the third parties. You can't blame radicals. You can't blame anybody when that politic is not necessarily popular amongst the people. That's a small subset. It's actually the white boys who actually did not come out to support Kamala Harris that actually did that. Because I was like, you could have clocked that one immediately, right? Yeah. And so I think it's interesting because we're also, and I love what you were saying earlier because I want to bring this point in. I was like, you have to understand there needs to be a multiracial piece. Like James Baldwin even said, like, black folks can't do it alone. We have to do it in community. Correct. And I think the tension in that, and I think the tension in that is because we're, especially as black folks, a lot of us are like, y'all gonna stop doing us dirty because at this point I'm taking my break, right? I actually argue that black folks can't take a break at this time because we're gonna brunt the worst of the consequence. But my question to you then, kind of, for me, I see your politic realized in your advocacy for Chinatown and being against the arena being brought downtown. Sure. And so can you talk a little bit more about like why that kind of advocacy was important to you and even to listeners, like why is it important to worry about an issue like that in Philadelphia?
Yeah, so this was interesting because I'm black for real. Yeah. And we had,
as everybody says, Happy Black History Month, yo. We already here.
Yeah. And there were a lot of conversations in my home. A lot is probably taxing it, but there were enough conversations in my home about black and Asian dynamics. Yeah. I was born in '88. Yeah. I think. There was like a Pan-African expression that kind of happened in the early 90s. Yep. A lot of black pride that was going on at that time. We saw uprisings and things like that, and people remember what took place in LA and what led to those sorts of things. And so that stuff is not foreign in my in our household. And so I heard those things coming up. And when the conversation about there being an arena being put literally on the doorstep of Chinatown, this was happening at a time where there were some concerns about anti-Asian sentiment within the country, among other things. And so, a lot of folks were asking me, like, why would you be so, gung-ho for folks down in Chinatown? These were like real questions that were raised to me.
No, I got questions all the time.
Yeah, like, why do you care that much about X, Y, and Z thing? For me, I am a minister. Yeah. I do pastor a church. And while I recognize my blackness and all of that, I am never losing sight of the beloved. This sounds cheesy. Of beloved community.
Wow, I told you it's good. We need more sense and genuine people in these spaces.
For me, there at some point we need to recognize when even our own aspirations are only reflecting the sort of exploitative, repressive behavior of the dominant culture. And I think
agents of capitalism.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think that we've been so many in this country have been so formed by that independent, me, myself, and I, no one else can get up, only I can succeed kind of mindset, that we have lost sight of these values that we give lip service to. Yeah. We celebrate King Day, and we talk about what he said. He was an anti-capitalist, right? We miss so much. So not to go too far, let me just say, I had to tease out early on what mattered to me. What it seemed to be the case was that there was a community that was organized, that was saying, hey, there's this proposal that we have not been included on, where they want to put an arena that could devastate our community. We've seen this happen before. And there's a long history of Chinatown having to push back against development in their area.
Right.
People wanting to live in their community. That's a basic human thing, to live.
And they've already been displaced once.
1,000%. The other thing that I understand that is basic to human beings is not just living or loving, but working.
Yeah.
Work itself, and I don't mean the job that you have to clock into, but work, what we produce, is basic to who you are as human beings. So the idea that there are workers in the city that need contracts to build, that's important to a city, right? The skyline didn't get here because someone imagined it. It got here because there were people who had hands and tools, and they put their hand to the plow and they got that thing done. So I'm not against workers getting contracts either. So how do I met out on this? Well, for me, if a community organized is telling you, hey, this is harmful to our ability to live and thrive, right? I need to hear them, right? I need to heed that. And I think that if you had more persons in government who were not just hearing the people, but also saying what the people are saying, I think we would engender a better sense of trust or expectation from the populace, and we would get better civic engagement. So I think it was about making sure that I'm actually being a representative for the people I serve at large, and they're a part of that community.
Yeah, which I appreciate you naming that piece, because I always say, like, if you are getting into, and Daniel had asked me the question, 2 weeks ago now, like, how am I getting into politics? And I was like, there is a level of service to the people and sacrifice that you make because you get into the space because you want to represent the people. Yeah. And oftentimes what we are seeing in this distrust that begins to happen is that if 70% of the city said they didn't want this, that's an overwhelming majority of folks in the city that said they do not want this arena downtown, but you don't listen, you now directly tell the people, like, I actually don't represent you. I represent a small minority of folks and or billionaires that are going to be focused in this space. And so how do you personally enter back into a space or continue to work in this space of people who may fundamentally be aligned differently and still have to get the work you need to get done? Because I think oftentimes we see like this disagreement happen, but you still have to go to work with a lot of these folks every single day. Sure. And so how do you, like, one, maintain that piece, but also have to navigate, like, after the arena now was like, oh, actually, we're going to go to South Philly. We're going to, we're going to do what everybody's saying. Anyways, what, right. Like, and my question is, like, where do we go from here? Because now there's still a skepticism that is happening around, like, what happens to Market East. But how do you personally get to reinstill faith, the people's faith in you to continue to advocate while also having to work alongside folks who may not have those same motivations? Yeah, it's a challenge to that has been a challenge for me, and I want to be mindful to say that I have met wonderful folk. Since being elected and now since being inaugurated and now working in this position, in this role, and there are a lot of folks who have incredible stories, and folks should spend some time and talk to folks in City Hall sometime. That's all there, but it is a challenge to not come from the culture that produces the kind of the political class in our city. I'm an independent. Like I said, when I lost the first time. I ran twice. I lost the first time, won the second time, and both times, both major parties were against us. Spent over $1 million to keep us out. This behavior. I saw your face. Yeah, dog. This happens. Yeah. Like, and so coming into the space,
only being informed by the people organized, like the folks in Chinatown, like I spoke to, the folks that I actually know, not corporate bosses who don't take us seriously anyway. You know, being informed by what they care about, having a clearer, dare I say, purer kind of North Star and ethic or compass that informs the way that we move and all that, that's challenging because no one else outside of Kendra Brooks operates, at least that I can tell, off of that same kind of compass.
Right.
They are informed by who their other funders are. That's the benefit of being an independent. It means you won't get included in the Cool Kids Club. You probably won't get very far as long as money interests are against you. But there is I heard on this old Black Power mixtape, old councilman in California say, I'm a city councilman. It's the lowest political party, but you can talk loud. It's the lowest political position, but you can talk loud. I can talk loud.
Yeah.
It makes it difficult to work with other folks, though, because they can't.
Yeah.
Sometimes they make decisions, and I know that they're a decent person, but they're making a decision not because the folks told them so, but because they're concerned about their reelection. They're concerned about what other shadowy things might happen to them.
Yeah.
So it is challenging to kind of come into that space because for me, I'm not going back saying, hey, this is what happened to X, Y, and Z. What do you think I should do?
Yeah.
Our staff will tell you, we sit down, we think through and we wrestle through some of these things and we make a decision about how we're going to move and we move. So that's challenging, right? The bureaucracy, the sluggishness of government, a lot of that stuff comes from, the culture of the parties and things like that. So, I can't fix the bad rap that politics has gotten in the eyes of the populace.
Right.
What I can do is be committed to, be clear about my North Star, be committed to my principles, and be authentic in my engagement with folks, and articulate what they're saying.
Yeah.
If
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that part, that's the important piece. I think, especially in like a role like yours and folks who are supposed to be communicators of politics and media, oftentimes right now, politics feels like a privileged class thing to participate in.
It is.
But very much so.
It's
right?
become that for sure.
Yeah. But when I hear you are talking as well, I know. And I always tell the story, like when I was doing a lot of my activism in Reading, PA, a lot of folks were really behind what I was doing, but it was like, Marquise, I need you to talk for me because they look at you because you have a degree. And it'd be the niggas on the stoop who are just like, they're not going to look at me even if we can share the same idea because it won't land the same.
Sure.
And just know I want to support you, but I don't want to distract away from your mission. And so I think that's important because now you have somebody in a space who can communicate. And that's why, like what you said resonates of like, how do you become a communicator of information? And though it may not be your lived experience, these are people you represent. And like, you have to go into a space and know this is actually what my people, this is what they are feeling. How do you articulate that then into policy, right? And so I'm now thinking around some of the stuff that you've proposed for policy. What are some of those things that you have done and gotten through successfully?
Sure.
That the people should know about?
I should say that it is a challenge to legislate. You're in a body of a number of different folks. You have to be able to count to 9, at least in Philadelphia City Council. You have to be able to count to 9 and then 12 if you don't want it to be vetoed. You have to get 9 votes. So it is challenging. And so what you find oftentimes are members who advance resolutions or other things that aren't going to be that controversial so they can at least kind of build up their tally. And we've done a few of those things, but one thing I do want to at least mention in terms of like material, like hard legislation that has become law that we're very proud of. Our team has been mindful of the housing crisis. You've heard a lot about that across the country. Here in Philadelphia, we have a city that's older than the country itself, and our housing stock looks like it. And so you have, you have a real disparity as it relates to that, and you have corporations that are aware of that lack of housing and access to it, and seeing an opportunity in the city of Philadelphia to develop. In the same way that I said before, that I'm not against workers getting contracts, I'm not against building things. Right? I'm honored and pleased to see cranes in the sky moving. But my question is always, what are we building and who are we building for? A lot of these developers are coming in building for not citizens of the city of Philadelphia. They're building apartment units that are $3,000 a month or what have you or more to attract in New York and D.C. that's going to spill over here. These folks will be here about 2-3 years and they bounce.
Yeah, they are.
So what we said is, hey, and what we recognize is that there are corporations that are in multifamily housing that are using AI, using algorithms to basically price gouge, fix prices for rental units, in so much that you are getting higher prices for rents, and that corporations are almost like cartelling together, working together. So we banned algorithmic rental price fixing here in the city of Philadelphia, and we're very proud of that, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
These things may not be immediately recognizable, but we hope that as you see corporations piling in, running into Philadelphia to kind of buy up as much as they can and build because they're trying to, address the housing crisis. But if we want to make sure that they're fixing prices, that they're setting prices that are affordable for working class Philadelphians in the city of Philadelphia. I don't mind increasing the tax base by bringing folks in, but we need to prioritize the people that live here first, the folks who have lived here for generations. Yeah. And if we do not check the advance of AI and algorithms, we're already behind the 8 ball.
Yes, we are.
We're already behind the 8 ball. And so this was a way at the local level for us to say, hey, this is one of the major things. The algorithm is shaping our realities in real life, including the prices that we pay for our housing. So why don't we check that now? Yeah. And we put all these corporations on ice to say, hey, don't come to the city of Philadelphia using no AI, tell them, and setting the prices there, making it so high that folks can't live. Yeah. That's something we're proud of, and that's something that we want to continue down that lane.
No, and that's awesome. And thank you for breaking that down, because you named the problem, talked around the process, and now you were able to talk around here's what you should end up feeling by the end of this, because I think oftentimes people engage in politics and there's no tangible thing that people feel right away, and so that's the sluggishness of politics, as you called it. And I appreciate you being able to name all of that, because I think it's important to, one, get to know who you were and who you are and who you're going to become, and see your role in politics during this time, and also actually break some policy down. I think a lot of times we don't get to that piece. We see a headline, we see this, but we're just like, but what's it supposed to feel like? I don't know what this is supposed to impact me right away a lot of the time, right? And so I realize even with a lot of people, there is something people are going to feel a couple years from now. There's something people may not recognize in there every single day that we just got to kind of make it plain. And so I appreciate you being willing to make it plain in that way.
Thank you.
And I think now for me, especially as we begin to land this plane, is honestly a little bit more personal. You're about to also become a father.
I am. Your boy has been busy.
That's crazy.
I'm teasing. I'm very excited. Very excited. We're very excited.
And so, even for that, there's part of it is even in fatherhood, that can change your fundamental movement or increase the stakes a lot more in terms of the work that you do, not only for the people, but now you also are going to have a lineage of folks here coming in that potentially your policy will impact the livelihood of your child, right? And so how do you think the excitement of fatherhood may potentially impact the way you move as a politician, but also your commitment to community?
The beauty of being a minister with a pastoral charge, I do pastor church, a small church, is that you do develop a sense of care for other people, and what they are going through often shapes and informs the way you approach and the way you show up in the world in your leadership position. Yeah. I also will say that I'm thinking about Baldwin, all the children are ours. If you can't recognize that, you may not be capable of morality, I think is what he said. Yeah. And so I have always been informed by others. I've always been informed by how the children writ large are doing. I can only expect to be even more personally impacted in my own, to feel a personal impact when if I have my own blood child coming into the world. My commitment to measurably and materially improving the lives of working people preceded having a child. I hope only to be more of a good example for them when they get here, to say that this is a tradition that they should continue on. Yeah. I think it'll just I think it'll be more of a kind of a home impact about making sure that I am distilling within my child that this is something that we are committed to, that government, that this life is not exclusively about ourselves, that we should be always trying to do for others, and that it's, no matter how old hat it gets, love and compassion are still values worth realizing in society, fighting for, contending for, and pushing for. So I think it'll just focus for me.
Yeah.
The work that I do now, that I've been honored to be able to serve in this capacity, it'll just bring it home in a more personal way.
Ain't gotta tell me twice. All right, I got a quick couple rapid fire just because you've been talking politics this whole time. Let's get to know a little bit about you.
Sure.
Comedy or drama?
Comedy.
Okay. Favorite album? What are you currently listening to?
Currently?
Yeah.
Jackie Vernon. Jackie Vernon.
I'm ready for that.
It's a black woman down in Texas. I think she's from Austin, Texas, with a guitar, and she makes it sing. You feel her through her concerts. Highly recommend. Incredible sound on her.
Yeah. Okay. Good. What are you currently watching on TV?
What's the name of that show? Paradise.
Oh, dog. Yeah. Dog, I'm watching it now. I'm going home after this and watching this episode tonight. I said I've been hyped. It's out. Sterling K. Brown, the guy.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Favorite color? Oh, wow. You just wear black and white all day?
I don't have one. That's honest.
Oh, wow.
I don't have a favorite color.
Okay.
I wear a lot of black and blue. Blue is very stately. Yeah. Yeah, but I don't have a favorite color. Yeah.
Cool. Favorite genre of music?
Soul.
Energy. And then last but not least, favorite food?
Chicken.
Oh. Are you a dark meat, light meat kind of person?
I'm a nigga. I look dark meat. I don't like no dried chicken. Make it juicy for me, dog. Yeah. Yeah, that's me.
Hey, he said I'm black for real. Stop playing with me. Dog, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Thank you for having. I got caught. Some eyelash got caught in my eye. Goddamn. Thank you for coming on to the show. Thank you for just sharing like your story, sharing your politic, and allowing people to get to know you and inviting into that space as well. I think that's so important, especially as like you still represent the people, and we're still going to be able to push you to be better no matter what. I always tell people, don't be fans of your politicians. Just make sure that they are in service of you and always committed. So thank you for doing that. So continue to do the work that you're doing. Continue to serve the people. Continue to speak life into folks as well. It's good for me personally, it's good to see someone like you and Kendra Brooks out there, because I'm like, okay, these are people I genuinely I see y'all, but also it feels like politics becomes more accessible to the kids that I serve in education, but the kids abroad here in Philly that I'm also mentoring and seeing on the block. So thank you for the work that you do. We will continue to push you, but also just let the people know how they can support you too.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to be on here. Mm-hmm. Yes, people can find me on social media, NICOROURKEPHL. So that's Nick O'Rourke PHL on Instagram, as well as whatever other social media sites that we might be on.
It depends on where you're going. There's a current digital segregation happening right now. Yeah, it's a little weird.
And of course, too, you please feel free to come and hold us accountable, to come talk to us, to come meet you can meet your council persons as well. Come to the office. We are on the 3rd floor in Philadelphia City Council, and we will be happy to meet you and talk with you there.
Ain't nothing but a word.
Yes, indeed.
All right, y'all. Please make sure that y'all stay activated. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you once again for going on.
Thank you, Marquise.
Hit that like and subscribe button if you are watching on YouTube. Make sure to hit that rate and review if you are listening on your Monday morning drive as well on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So please make sure you're supporting us. I will see you next week. Peace.